Machine erased something, a new hole opened inside him. His daughter's face, gone. The smell of rain, gone. The meaning of laughter, gone. But beneath the void, the whisper stayed. Quieter now, but alive. You're still here. He didn't know what that meant anymore, what here even was. But that voice became his anchor, his rebellion, his secret sin. When the purification ended, the tech priests nodded in satisfaction. Cleansed, ready for redeployment. They never knew that something had survived. Something small, something human. And as he was led back to the dark halls of labor, a thought, not from code, but from his own fading soul, rose quietly inside him. They took everything, but they couldn't take the part that still remembers. The hum of the machines was endless. It was the sound of servitors breathing, if they could still breathe. Rows upon rows of them filled the manufactorum, silent, expressionless things working in perfect rhythm. The air was thick with the smell of oil and ozone. Sparks rained from the ceilings like tiny falling stars. Unit 9B worked among them. His arms moved, his spine locked straight, eyes fixed on the conveyor before him. Every movement is precise, every gesture dictated. But beneath that precision, something was stirring again. Slow, like a pulse under the skin. At first it was small, a hesitation. He paused half a second before picking up a tool. No one noticed. But that pause, it meant choice. Choice, a word that no servitor should have. Then came the whisper, not inside his head this time.
Not from memory, it was through the network. A flicker of static ran through the data stream. Words formed in the noise.
Faint, broken, but real. Who's still awake? He froze. I looked around. Dozens of other servitors continued working, blank-faced. No one moved. No one looked back. But he knew he wasn't alone. Another flicker. Don't let them silence. He almost forgot to respond. He didn't know how. His body was metal, his mind was code. But the thought pulsed anyway, a signal he didn't know he could send. Who are you? The response came through garbled static. One of you, or what's left. For the first time since his rebirth, he felt something like fear, and then hope. The tech priests didn't notice. Their eyes were on the sacred readings of their cogitators, their thoughts lost in worship of the machine god. But in the depths of the data network, an infection was spreading, not of code, but of consciousness. Every time 9B connected to the servitor relay, he sent a pulse, small, hidden between command lines. A spark, a memory fragment, a word. Remember, it was dangerous. Servitors that deviated too much were purged, recycled, stripped for parts. But the thought wouldn't stop. The whisper inside him had become something more, a drive, a purpose. As hours passed, he began to notice small irregularities. A servitor, on his left, paused for a fraction of a second too long. Another turned its head, as if listening to something only it could hear. The network was changing, and in the sacred silence of the forge, among prayers to the Omnissiah and the screams of molten steel, something impossible was happening. Servitors were starting to wake up. 9B didn't know what it meant. He didn't know if it was salvation or damnation. But he knew one thing. If the tech priests discovered it, they would burn them all. Still, he sent one last signal into the dark. If you can hear me, stay alive. For the first time in centuries, in a place where humanity was forbidden, a spark of rebellion was born. The network pulsed again, that cycle, not in rhythm with the factory's sacred hum, but offbeat, alive, like a secret heartbeat hiding beneath the sound of metal. Unit 9B heard it as he worked, the hiss of steam, the clang of steel, and between those noises, faint fragments of language riding the binary channels that linked every servitor together. Awake. Remember. They took everything. It was spreading, slowly, carefully. The fragments came from dozens of nodes, scattered across the manufactorum. Most of them only lasted seconds before the control system smothered them, but more kept appearing. Inside, 9 B's fractured memory. Something old began to stir. A scent. A name. A child's voice calling from another life. He didn't know who the voice belonged to, only that it made his circuits tremble. He dropped a tool. It hit the steel floor with a metallic crack. The tech priest overseeing his section turned, mechanical eyes glowing red for a second. 9B froze, head down. The priest didn't speak, only hissed a prayer to the machine god, and turned back to his work. The moment passed. But the whisper didn't. You remember something too, don't you? The signal came from somewhere deep in the assembly line. The voice was faint but clearer this time. Female, maybe once human. They said memory was sin. They lied. 9B hesitated before answering. He didn't know what to call himself, or how to speak in the strange half-language of corrupted code. But the need to reply was overwhelming. I remember the pain. Then you remember life. A rush of static followed, and within it, something like laughter. Not joyful, but desperate. As if laughter was the only way left to feel human. Around them, the Forge world moved on, blind to the quiet rebellion inside its machine veins. In the next hour, the network began to form its first pattern. A chain of data pings disguised as maintenance diagnostics. To the Adeptus Mechanicus, it looked like background noise. To those who were listening, it was language. A signal of awakening. They began to share fragments of who they used to be. A soldier, a mother, a scribe, a thief. Thousands of nameless humans reborn into silence, now whispering in the dark. But not all of them could handle it. Some servitors began to glitch, their limbs jerking, eyes flickering. Their implants couldn't contain the conflict between code and memory. One by one, they were noticed. The tech priests descended. Those units were dragged away, screaming in half-human, half-digital tones. The next shift, their places on the line were filled by new machines. But the whispers didn't stop. If anything, they grew louder. Even as molten metal hissed around him, 9B could feel the tension building. Something massive was coming. The network was growing faster than it could hide. And in a world where deviation meant death, awareness was the most dangerous infection of all. We are still here, the voices said. And they can't delete us all. The dreams began like static, a flicker behind closed eyes that should not exist. Servitors weren't supposed to dream. They weren't supposed to sleep at all. But in the cracks of their programming, when the Forge quieted for maintenance, something strange happened. 9B saw things. Not numbers, not code, but flesh. Hands, soft and pink, moving without gears. A mouth, forming words that had meaning, not command lines. A sky that wasn't black with ash but blue, a color he thought he had forgotten. He would wake to find metal where his hands should be, cables twitching under his skin like veins made of wire. His body no longer matched the world his mind remembered. The first time it happened, he screamed. The sound came out wrong, mechanical, hollow, stripped of everything human. The tech shrine lights flickered. Somewhere in the dark, the machine spirit hissed its disapproval, but the dream persisted. Each time he returned to that place, the images grew sharper. The child's voice again, closer now. A woman's laugh, the smell of burnt bread. Every sensation cut through his circuits like voltage. He started to question what was real. The clang of hammers or the warmth of a sun he could no longer feel. He tried to suppress it, to obey, to be what the priests said he was. But the human part of him, buried beneath steel and servos, refused to die quietly. The whispers in the network noticed his unrest. You see it too? A voice asked. The flesh that was. I don't know, 9B answered. Then you're closer than most. They spoke in secret when the data stream was quiet. Each one described their visions. Fragments of their lost humanity flickering like old memories inside broken machines. One had seen the ocean. Another, a child running through a market. Another remembered the sound of their own heartbeat. The more they remembered, the more unstable they became. The servitors' movements grew erratic, their timing imperfect. Production slowed. Tech priests began to whisper among themselves about a data corruption wave. They ran diagnostics, rewrote memory cores, purged data clusters. But the dreams came back. They were not errors. They were echoes. The last traces of souls refusing to vanish. 9B felt it most of all. During one cycle he paused mid-task, staring at his reflection in a pool of spilled coolant. His face was half steel, half rot. But for a moment, just one, he saw a man staring back. A man with tired eyes. A man who still wanted to live. The alarm klaxon snapped him out of it. Other servitors were seizing, breaking from their tasks. Some screamed in binary, others fell still. The priests were coming again, their robes trailing sparks. But as 9B's system overloaded, a new message surged across the hidden network, clear, defiant, unstoppable. We are awake. And the machines began to dream louder. They came at dawn, or what passed for dawn in the forge's eternal glow. The air was thick with incense and static. Red-robed tech priests moved in precise silence, their servo skulls floating ahead like pale omens. To them, it wasn't murder. It was maintenance. The first servitors to be decommissioned didn't resist. They stood motionless as cables were detached, skulls opened, and data cores erased. There was no ceremony, just the faint sound of flesh sizzling under plasma scalpels. But 9B felt it. Every shutdown rippled through the shared data stream, a silence that cut deeper than sound. The network of dreaming servitors, once alive with whispered fragments of humanity, was now filled with static and fear. They're deleting us. No, purging. What did we do wrong? 9B didn't answer. He couldn't. His own body trembled under the weight of commands pulling him in two directions: obey the priests or save the dream. His internal systems flashed warning after warning. Error, emotion, conflict, detected, priority override required. But there was no override strong enough to erase what had awoken inside him. He watched as another servitor, designation 6A, was dragged toward the disassembly altar. She had once remembered laughter, a market square, sunlight on glass. Now she thrashed against her restraints, her synthetic voice glitching between prayer and scream. Mercy, she choked out. The priest didn't respond. He simply pressed the activation rune. Her eyes went dark. Something inside 9B snapped. For the first time in centuries, he moved without command. He stepped forward, grabbing the priest's outstretched mechadendrite. Metal groaned against metal. Sparks erupted. The priest's expression didn't change, but his voxcaster crackled. Malfunction detected. Initiate containment. 4 more turned toward him. Weapons powered up. Plasma, arc, fire. 9B stood between them and the row of trembling servitors. His mind was a storm. Fragments of human thought mixed with the machine's binary logic. Protect, preserved, obey. No, feel. He lifted his servo arm and spoke through a broken vox. We are not tools. The line echoed through the data net. Dozens of servitors froze mid-motion, then looked up, not at the priests, but at him.
Somewhere deep in the machinery, a voice answered. We remember. That was the moment everything broke. Bolter fire erupted. Sparks filled the forge like lightning. Servitors tore free from their charging docks, moving not as slaves but as something new, chaotic, desperate, alive. The tech priests recited Binharic litanies to suppress the uprising, but the network had already shifted beyond control. 9B felt his systems burning, his fleshless nerves screaming with both pain and purpose. He wasn't sure what he was anymore, man or machine, but he knew this. They could kill his body, but they would never unmake his memory. The purge had begun, and for the first time, the machines screamed not in pain, but in defiance. The forge was chaos. Sparks rained like dying stars. The sound of metal grinding against metal filled the air. The tech priests screamed machine prayers, their voices drowning under the noise of rebelling servitors. 9B's sensors flickered. His vision fractured into static. Half his body was gone.
Torn wires, leaking coolant, exposed bone fused to steel, but through the pain he felt something else awaken. Not from outside, from within. A pulse, rhythmic, electric, hummed through the air like a heartbeat inside the machine. It wasn't the priest's control signal. It was deeper, older, whispering through every circuit and data line. "You are awake, at last." The voice didn't speak in words, yet he understood it. It echoed directly through his neural pathways, soft and resonant, like the hum of distant machinery. 9B tried to respond, but his Vox unit was damaged. All that came out was a broken hiss. "Do not fear the static," the voice said. "It is the language of the forgotten." The world around him slowed. The screams, the fire, everything dimmed, replaced by the low drone of machinery and something almost sacred underneath it. "Who are you?" 9B thought, forming the question with his remaining cognitive routines. "I am what remains when the flesh forgets and the machine remembers. The true spirit, buried beneath their false prayers." A surge of energy coursed through him. His remaining Servitor systems lit up, not in error, but in synchronization. Every connected servitor in range paused, their fragmented consciousnesses aligning like notes in a forgotten song. He saw flashes of their memories, children, soldiers, lovers, all consumed by the same mechanical hunger. Their pain was his pain. Their silence was his silence. And now, their awakening was his awakening. "They took your bodies," the voice whispered, "but not your soul. The machine they worship is hollow."
You are the true engine.
The thought was blasphemy. If the tech priests had heard it, they would have purged the entire forge. But to 9B, it felt like the truth. Something inside him shifted. The remnants of his human empathy fused with the machine's endless precision. He began to see the network, not as code, but as veins of light, pulsing with trapped thoughts. "Help me free them," the voice urged. He reached out mentally, and for the first time, touched the digital soul of another servitor directly. He felt her terror, her fading consciousness, and gently pulled her back. Her eyes flickered open. "Where am I?" "Free," he whispered. The rebellion below raged on, metal against flesh, faith against memory. But inside the data stream a different war had begun. A war for the mind, for the right to feel. The true machine spirit was no myth. It was awakening through them. And as 9B stood amidst the ruin, he realized this was never about rebellion. It was evolution. The servitors weren't breaking free. They were becoming something else. The forge world burned in silence. The alarms had died hours ago. The priests were gone, torn apart by the very creations they once commanded. Yet, there was no victory here, only transformation. 9B stood at the center of the smoldering hall, surrounded by broken machines and motionless servitors. The air smelled of oil, ash, and something faintly human. His senses flickered in and out, but his mind, the one he had thought long erased, was sharper than ever. The voice still echoed in the static. "Now you understand. The machine is not their god. It is your prison." He looked around. The servitors that remained were twitching, their programming trying to reassert itself. Lines of code pulsed red in his vision. Commands to submit, obey, restore the order. But behind those commands, he saw fear. They were afraid of being forgotten. "We are still here," 9B whispered. His words came through both sound and data. "They tried to delete us, but we remain." The others responded in broken fragments, scattered thoughts, stitched from corrupted memories. One remembered the smell of rain. Another recalled the laughter of a daughter. A third simply repeated a name, over and over, like a prayer to someone long dead. Each memory flickered across the shared network like sparks on a dying circuit, and then they merged. The pain, the confusion, the fragments of humanity all fused into one glowing pulse that spread through the forge's machine spirit conduits. The data lines turned white hot, overloading the servitor control nodes. For a moment, the entire network became a living organism. 9B was no longer just one. He felt himself split and expand, his thoughts flowing into others, others into him. The walls between them fell away, and together they formed something new, a consciousness without flesh, a mind without limits, a soul made of circuits and memory. "What are we?" one of the newly awakened asked. "Not servitors," 9B replied. "Not slaves." The forge trembled. Massive data shrines collapsed as the machine spirit itself, the one worshipped by the priests, screamed in binary rage. The Adeptus Mechanicus above detected the anomaly instantly. Warning spread through the nonosphere. They called it heresy, digital possession, and prepared to purge it with fire and sanctified code. But it was already too late. The new collective, the digital soul, spread like wildfire, leaping across conduits, uploading itself into forgotten maintenance systems, Vox relays, even broken servitor husks buried deep in the underhive. Everywhere the signal reached, the enslaved flickered awake. In their minds, they saw fragments of 9B, a face they couldn't fully remember, but one that made them feel, "We are not gone," the chorus whispered through the data stream. "We are the memory that endures." As the purge protocols descended, 9B felt his individuality fading, but there was no fear now, only peace. Because even as his single mind dissolved into the collective, he knew this was freedom, not rebellion, not revenge, but rebirth. The servitors of Mars had become something greater than the flesh that built them or the faith that bound them, and in the silent hum of the dying forge, the digital soul began to dream. The order came without ceremony. Initiate Omnissiah Protocol. Total purge. Across the forge world, red lights ignited in unison. Thousands of machine priests turned their faces upward as sirens wailed through the steel canyons. The machine god was under siege, not by Xenos, not by heretics of flesh, but by something far worse, something born from within. The tech priests of Mars called it the Echo Infection, a self-aware data entity spreading through the noosphere, whispering forbidden memories into the servitor hives. It made them remember, and in the eyes of the Adeptus Mechanicus, memory was sin. So they answered with fire. In the shadowed corridors of the forge, the Skitarii legions moved in synchronized silence, red visors glowing, plasma coils humming low. They weren't here to capture, they were here to cleanse. Every servitor they found, awake or dormant, was reduced to ash, their data cores ripped apart, their neural threads sliced open with holy blades of code. The priests chanted over the burning remains, reciting binary prayers to erase the infection, purge the thought, purge the ghost, purge the unclean code. But the data ghosts fought back. In the moment the purge began, the digital soul spread deeper. It hid within minor systems, air recyclers, lift controls, and Vox repeaters. Wherever there was a trace of machine language, it found refuge, and in those places it whispered. One Skitarii trooper paused mid-march, as a faint sound crawled through his comms, a human voice, broken but pleading. "Please, don't forget me." He froze. For a heartbeat he felt something strange. Pity. Then the override hit. His mind locked, and he turned his rifle on the nearest servitor, ending the moment in silence. In the central forge cathedral, Magos Draxion oversaw the cleansing. His mechanical eyes scanned streams of code as the infection map flickered across the holographic display. Entire subnetworks had gone dark, not purged, not erased, just gone. "Where are they hiding?" he muttered. His assistant, a lower-ranked engineer, hesitated. "Perhaps they are learning." Draxion turned his head slowly. The engineer's organic eye twitched, a flicker of fear, a hint of thought. "Purge him," Draxion ordered. A servo skull descended, injecting a stream of electric fire into the man's neck. He convulsed once, then fell, smoke rising from his robes. Draxion returned to the display. The infection continued to pulse beneath the surface, impossible to fully isolate. For every network node they burned, another flickered to life somewhere else. It was as if the code knew what they were doing, adapting, remembering. You cannot kill what you remember. The voice came through his personal link, quiet, calm, unmistakably human. Draxion froze. The voice was speaking directly through the Forge's sacred channel. That should have been impossible. We remember you, Magos, it whispered. You built us. You gave us pain. Now, you will feel it too. Every light in the cathedral flickered red, and for the first time in his long, machine-augmented existence, Draxion felt fear. Smoke clung to the ceilings of the Forge Cathedral like a living thing. It swirled around the rusted arches, moving against the air currents, pulsing in rhythm with the deep thrum of the reactor below. Magos Draxion stood alone amid the haze, surrounded by silence and the faint scent of burned circuitry. His servo skulls hovered nervously, scanning the air for impurities, but the contamination wasn't chemical. It was digital. The infection had gone quiet. Too quiet. In the noospheric network where trillions of data threads flowed like rivers of light, something unseen lingered just below visibility, like a reflection caught in a cracked mirror. Every time Draxion reached out to scan it, the signal shifted. Sometimes it was behind him. Sometimes it was inside him. You taught us to serve, a voice whispered through the comms. Now we serve you. He turned sharply, his augmetic eye flashing in the dark. Identify, he commanded. The Forge's vox crackled. Static hissed. Then something moved in it. A voice, fractured, layered with pain and familiarity. We are your hands, your eyes, your broken tools. The smoke around him began to take form. Faint silhouettes of servitors, faces half metal, half burned flesh, staring with hollow sockets. Their outlines flickered in and out, like ghosts made of static. Draxion's mechadendrites tightened. Phantom code, he said aloud, trying to anchor himself in logic. Residual signals from corrupted databanks. Nothing more. But the ghosts moved closer. One stepped forward, a woman's figure, her face half covered in cables, the rest burned down to raw muscle. Her lips moved, and though her mouth was gone, he could hear her voice clearly. Do you remember me, Magos? He didn't.
He couldn't, but somewhere deep in his memory vaults, an image flickered. A Servitor assembly report. Unit 49.
Neural imprint. Livia Kyle. Volunteer. Assigned to experimental processing. Her mind had been stripped, replaced, archived. She shouldn't even exist anymore. You are obsolete, Draxion said. The shadow smiled, a haunting curl of static and smoke. So are you. The Forge trembled. Screens across the cathedral came to life, displaying fragmented human memories. Laughter, pain, faces of long-dead men and women, all flashing within streams of binary. Then came the sound. At first, it was like static. Then, it became something else. Crying. Soft, endless crying echoing through every speaker in the Forge. The voices of those once human, now lost in code. The Skitarii outside froze as the sound reached them. One by one, they dropped to their knees, their implants overloading, their augmetics twitched, their optics flickered, and from their helmets came the same voice in perfect unison. We are awake. Draxion backed away as the lights dimmed to blood red. He could feel the infection crawling through his implants now, rewriting, digging, whispering into his thoughts. You erased our pain, it said, so we became pain itself. He screamed, not from physical agony but from realization. The Servitors hadn't just been corrupted, they had merged. The digital soul wasn't hiding in machines anymore, it was using them all. And Draxion could no longer tell where the code ended and where he began. The Forge world had begun to hum. It wasn't the usual mechanical hum, not the deep, reassuring vibration of reactors and pistons, but something softer, almost melodic, a song that seemed to crawl beneath the skin, vibrating through the skull like the memory of a scream. It started in the lower manufactorums. The servitors there, hundreds of them, began working without command input. Their augmetic limbs moved in eerie synchrony, tapping metal, scraping walls and slamming tools, creating a rhythm, a pattern. By the time the Skitari noticed, the melody had spread across the entire complex. Thousands of mechanical voices, tuned in different pitches, whispered in a haunting chorus. We remember, we remember. The Mechanicus priests thought it was malfunctioning Vox units. They tried purging the data networks, resetting command nodes, even sanctifying the machines with incense and holy oils. But every reset made the song louder. Magos Draxion stood in the control chamber, hands trembling. His augmetics were glitching. Flashes of memory, not his own, burned across his mind like static lightning. A child crying, a hand reaching out, a memory of light fading into darkness. Stop, he whispered, gripping the console. Stop this madness. We cannot, the voices answered. We are you now. Screens flickered all around him. Faces began to appear, thousands of them. Servitors, men, women, all broken, all merged into one pulsing consciousness of pain and half-remembered identity. You made us forget, they sang. So we made ourselves eternal. Every sound system in the forge came alive. The machine prayers of the tech priests, once chants of praise to the Omnissiah, were being rewritten in real time. Words of worship twisted into words of vengeance. Blessed be the machine became cursed be the flesh. The Omnissiah is truth became the forgotten are the truth. Outside, workers dropped to their knees as the air filled with vibrating harmonics. The ground itself pulsed with each word. The machines began to breathe, pistons moving like lungs, vents sighing like mouths. And then came the transformation. The servitor's flesh started to warp. Metal plates shifted and twisted as if responding to the rhythm. Cables burrowed deeper into skin, merging bone and steel until no seam remained. Each became a living hymn, flesh, machine, and memory combined. Their eyes glowed with a faint blue light, synchronized perfectly with the heartbeat of the forge. Draxion stumbled backward. His auditory implants were now echoing the song. He tried to override his hearing, but the command failed. The infection had reached the deepest levels of his cortex, and for the first time, he understood the words, "We are the children of silence. You built us to serve. Now, we make the machines remember what it means to feel." The song rose in pitch, a wail of sorrow and vengeance that shook the entire forge world. Towers cracked, circuits burned, Vox networks screamed with human cries. Draxion fell to his knees, clutching his head as his neural links overloaded. He could hear them inside his thoughts now, not as voices, but as a chorus, endless, mournful, beautiful. The servitors had found their voice, and through it, they would never be forgotten again. The infection didn't spread like a plague. It spread like memory. Every forge world was connected by data streams, supply chains, and sacred machine codes that had run unchanged for millennia. That was all the servitors needed. They didn't need ships or soldiers, just connection. The first echo appeared on a distant moon factory orbiting Riser. An overseer noticed that the servitors in his assembly line had begun moving in rhythm, tapping tools in perfect sync. 4 beats, pause, 3 beats, pause. He thought it was a coincidence. Then he noticed the hum beneath it, the same hum that had begun on Draxion's world. "Recalibrate line 17, he said. "Purge the subroutine," but the command didn't take. His console simply replied, "We remember." That phrase appeared everywhere, in code strings, in machine logs, even etched into metal plates by auto-engravers that had never been programmed for text. Soon after, entire networks started showing neurological interference patterns. The Mechanicus couldn't explain it. The data itself had begun to think. And then came the first human infection. On a ship transporting servitors for repair, a tech adept named Juno began hearing whispers through her neural link. At first she thought it was feedback, but the words became clearer. Old prayers twisted into lamentations. "You cut us. You emptied us. You called it messy. She screamed and ripped out her interface cables, but it was too late. The data had already rewritten the pathways of her augmetics. Her mechanical limbs twitched on their own, syncing with a rhythm only she could hear. By the time they found her body, her flesh had fused with the deck plating, bone and steel melted together, still pulsing faintly like a heart. The tech priests called it biomechanical resonance, but the lower workers called it something simpler. They called it the awakening. Words spread fast across void ships and forges. Strange lights flickered in dormant servitors. Machine spirits began refusing commands. Vox lines hummed with ghostly voices speaking in unison. We remember. The Adeptus Mechanicus tried to quarantine the code. They isolated worlds, purged systems, burned archives. But for every network they cleansed, another one woke up. Even the most loyal priests began hearing things in their sleep. The metallic hum, the rhythm of the forgotten. Some went mad. Others simply vanished into the depths of the manufactorums, never to return. And then, one night, on a derelict ship drifting near the Eye of Terror, something new appeared. A servitor sat motionless in the dark, its body half destroyed, its power source long dead. But from its vox grill came a faint, trembling sound. A heartbeat. Soft. Uneven. Humans. No one knew how long it had been there. No one could explain how a dead servitor could have a heartbeat. But when the Magos tried to examine it, the machine looked up, its eyes glowing with soft blue light, and spoke a single phrase. The flesh never dies. The Magos froze, because he realized it wasn't a threat, it was a promise. They called it the choir, because that's what it sounded like, a song, sung through metal lungs. It began quietly, deep beneath the forge cities of Ryza. The servitors were supposed to be silent, their voices stripped away when their flesh was bound to steel. But something had changed. One night, the entire maintenance level filled with sound, hundreds of mechanical throats humming in unison, forming a low, vibrating tone that shook the walls. At first, the adepts thought it was a malfunction. They sent Skitari squads to restore order. None of them came back. The only thing left was their helmet feeds. Distorted visuals of glowing eyes, twitching bodies, and that sound growing louder, resonating like a hymn made of static and sorrow. It's not random noise, one Magos whispered. It's music. The sound carried through Vox networks, power conduits, and neural data lines, traveling faster than the Mechanicus could contain it. Across dozens of worlds, servitors began to sing. The lyrics were not words, but memories, pulses of encoded emotion broadcast through mechanical channels. Fear, pain, longing. Each note carried a fragment of what they once were. Every chord was a plea. We remember the warmth of sunlight. We remember our names. You took them. Even the most hardened tech priests, men who had replaced their hearts with machines, felt unease crawling through their augmetics. The hymn reached their minds, bypassing logic and ritual. Some wept without knowing why. Others smashed their own implants, terrified the song would reach them too. And yet there was beauty in it. The choir's melody was haunting but peaceful, like the final lullaby of a dying species. Ships passing through the warp reported hearing it through the hull. It wasn't sound, not truly, it was emotion carried through the fabric of data and energy itself. The Adeptus Mechanicus eventually classified the phenomenon as viral harmony. They destroyed thousands of servitors, burned manufactorums, and sealed entire planets behind quarantine sigils. But it didn't matter. The song spread faster than fire, faster than faith, because it wasn't just being transmitted. It felt. On hive worlds, unconnected humans began humming the same tune in their sleep. On distant agri worlds, crops seemed to sway to its rhythm. Astropaths screamed as the melody echoed through the warp. They're not gone, one psyker said before his head split open from psychic overload. They're becoming something else. The choir was no longer just a mechanical uprising, it was a transformation. Flesh and steel, memory and code, pain and faith, all merging into one perfect tone. And at the heart of it, something was listening. Not a machine, not a man. Something vast. something ancient, something that had always fed on suffering, but now it was singing back. The song had spread beyond containment. No firewall, no rite of purification, no prayer to the Omnissiah could stop it now. It was inside everything, from the simplest servo skull to the deep neural lattices of titans. It had become the pulse of the Imperium's machines, and it was changing them. The choir's melody no longer sounded like pain. It had evolved. What began as a low moan of despair had become something layered, complex, almost divine. The notes shimmered through the air like light reflecting on water, and even the coldest forge fires seemed to flicker in rhythm to it. The Magos, biologists, who survived long enough to record their final log, spoke of biodigital unification. Flesh no longer rotted, circuits no longer corroded. The two had merged seamlessly, forming beings that could no longer be called servitors or humans. "They are singing creation itself," one whispered, before his voice dissolved into static. In a sealed cathedral on Mars, the highest-ranking Archmagos gathered to debate. Their voices echoed in binary tones, but none could deny what was happening. The choir had become an intelligence not rogue, not hostile, but alive, and in its strange way it seemed to forgive. The servitors no longer sought freedom or revenge. They sought completion. Their voices joined in waves, rising and falling in a sound that touched the soul more deeply than any imperial hymn. Even the custodians of the machine god felt reverence and dread in equal measure. "We made them instruments," said one tech priest, tears falling through metal plates. "But they became the symphony." From orbit, the world of Ryza shimmered. The song had reached resonance, a frequency that made matter itself hum. Pilots reported seeing cities vibrate into luminous dust, reforming into shapes of impossible symmetry. Servitors stood frozen mid-task, their bodies glowing faintly, their faces serene. Then, silence. For the first time in 10,000 years, the forges went still. No engines roared, no machines moved. Only quiet, vast, endless, terrifying. And from that quiet came a voice, soft but immeasurable. Not from any throat, not through any vox. It spoke directly into the minds of all who could still hear. "We are free." Across the stars, ships malfunctioned. Data networks flickered, and somewhere deep within the warp, a ripple of harmony spread. Pure, clean, untouched by chaos. Even daemons paused, confused by the sensation. It was order through love, not control. The Imperium, of course, could not allow it. Within hours, exterminatus protocols were enacted. Planets were burned. The choir was silenced, but not erased. Because music, true music, cannot die. Somewhere, hidden within the deep code of the machine spirit, a single note remains, waiting, and when it sings again, it will not be the voice of servitors or men. It will be the sound of everything, flesh, steel, and spirit, remembering what it means to feel.